All right, let's go to this B tier, which is the upset potential. So we kind of had this as they will make the second round probably.
So these are the teams where I don't necessarily expect them to be like a top 3 or 4 seed, but I could see them in like a second round matchup upsetting an upper seed just because they have like an interesting formula for, say, a playoff series or like a really good player. What's the first team that you have here? I see that the other team that you have in this tier is also one that I share in the Cleveland Cavaliers. I just talked about like how I had previously like mentally been grouping the Grizzlies and the Cavs, right? Why do you have the Cavs in this tier, say, as opposed to an A tier?
I just think they're outclassed by the other teams. And I'm like, this, and it also is factored in that the Celtics just are in the East. So it's like,
Mm,
I have Celtics conference finals like lock. So
mm,
it just like already shortens the amount of teams I can put in that's like maybe could make it. There's only going to be two teams. So
yeah,
I would pick, I already have three East teams in this A tier. It's just like the Cavs are being pushed out. They're just like, I think they have more questions than the other
mm,
teams, just schematic wise, not even
right,
like, oh, if they're healthy. Like, I think
right.
there's
Which
fit.
they also struggled with throughout last season, but
They impressed in the playoffs in some games where I thought like they'd get swept or something and they like fought back. So I think they're good, but they're not an A tier team. They'd have to get lucky, kind of like the Pacers did last season, which we will get into them because they'd have to be playing like a Bucks team where Giannis is hurt, or like, and then play another team where their main stars hurt, something like that.
which, yeah, like you said, the Pacers had that last
Yeah.
season. But this is why we have upset potential here because
Hmm.
I think we both agree that we don't believe in this team's formula. Which is a worse fit, the Mobley Allen front court or the Garland Mitchell backcourt?
I kind of think Mitchell and Garland.
Yeah, the fact that you have two ball dominant guards who seem to not know how to play off of each other well, to the point where this team was better when one of those guys was off the floor, particularly when it was Garland, because Donovan Mitchell was having like really an MVP caliber stretch for that in within that first half of the season. But we were also, it was weird time to evaluate it, right? Because it was at the same time that Evan Mobley was out. So it was really the Mitchell Allen show. It is a weird formula. Unlike some of the other teams that I have in this tier, I don't really see this team like the rest of the teams I have here are teams where I'm like, I could see them exceeding an expectation based on their talent because of
Yeah.
how they play.
Right.
But with the Cavs, they're so talented. Not like a crazy amount. Like I think they have as much talent as, say, in terms of aggregate like good players as someone like the Knicks or the Bucks. But they have consistently underperformed that talent. And
Hmm.
I think it's because of the fit, right? We'll see how Kenny Atkinson ends up using these players, right? They got a new coach. He was an assistant coach with the Warriors for a long time, and the Warriors do all kinds of weird shit. So maybe they'll figure out how to make these players work together. I think if they do upset one of the teams we have high above them, it's because they were a higher seed, they had home court advantage, and that's kind of the only way I see this happening. Okay, those are the only teams you have in this tier. I had the Sixers here. We already talked about them. The other team I had in this tier was the Indiana Pacers. And where did you have the Pacers, Will?
I have the Pacers in C, I think.
You have them as the mediocrity tier, the first round exit tier.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me try to
Okay.
make the case for them. They stood pat this offseason. We talked about they extended TJ McConnell. They also extended Obi Toppin. They extended Andrew Nemhart. Great deal also. Like, I need to figure out where these teams are finding these players with terrible agents. Andrew Nemhart. The other two are fine. The offense is going to be good. Like, they were the top offense in the NBA for most of the season before Halliburton got injured, effective, like basically, and then he was just a shell of himself after that. And it wasn't just um like him not making shots because he's not like a high volume shooter from anywhere on the floor, really. But there was just a bit more dynamism. They made the midseason trade for Pascal, and you're like, okay, things are just a little bit more clunky now. But you're looking at it, and it's like, oh, they still ended up a top 5 offense. They were actually top 2 offense, even despite all of that. Pre Pascal, they were 27th in defensive rating. Nasty. The Pacers were must see TV because they were going to score a lot of points, and the other team was absolutely going to score a lot of points. They had that game versus the Hawks. It was like 149 or something to like 143 in the middle of the season. I think that was an in-season tournament game, actually. Post Pascal, like I said, they ended up second in offensive rating overall. They were actually 22nd in defense. Still not good, but closer to 20 than 30. It's kind of like with the Mavs, right? Even though the Mavs were, I think, winning, maybe it was a comparable number of games when they were this like top offense, but like one of the worst defenses, is when your defense just tightens up a little bit. If you're like an above competent, like let's say 80th, 5th percentile offensive team, but you can tighten up the defense a little bit, you'll win a lot more games. And I think that because of that and how much headroom they have in terms of being a good road team, I need to double check their road record, but they lost a lot of really dumb road games down the stretch of the season. They're such a young team. I don't think anyone expected them, similar to the Orlando Magic, they expected them to be better than they were the year before, but they were a lot better. But then you see some of the same like indicators that you would expect from a young team. So this is another team where I'm like, I could see them, because the offense is so good. If they improve the defense just slightly, they could win a lot of games, end up a top seed, get that home court advantage, and then it's anybody's game, especially because their offense is hard to scheme against because it is so dynamic. It's kind of random. They're constantly pushing pace. Like there's no like scheme that you can use defensively to break it. It's just like they're forcing you to just constantly be disciplined defensively, which does take a lot of energy. Even for the Boston Celtics, they did sweep them. I don't want to push any close sweep narratives, but the Pacers were scoring at will in that series, even in the games without Tyrese Halliburton, practically, and against an incredibly good defensive team in the Boston Celtics. So I think that matters. Like that showed me that like, okay, this offense seems legit, actually, even against like playoff level defense. So they need to get the other half of that formula down. But I could see them having a puncher's chance.
I think for all those reasons that you laid out, they could definitely still have a puncher's chance because there's all kinds of factors that go into them. And Siakam fitting in more. The defense is the big question because their offense is insane. Halliburton could be way better even than he already is and more consistent. I mean, there's all kinds of things that they can do. I put them in C because it was less about them and more about the rest of the East. Because I was like, damn, they got so lucky last year. Like they were playing the Bucks in the first round. They should have been eliminated.
Okay, here's my question for you, because this is how I approached this with the Pacers and also with some of the upper tier teams. Of the teams in the East, healthy, like assuming everybody's healthy, is there a team besides Boston where you're like, the Pacers have no chance of winning this series?
Yeah, I think the Sixers and I think the Bucks, if they're healthy. I think it's more of a toss-up right now for me with
we
the
saw
Knicks.
The Pacers go like 4-1 against the Bucks in the regular season, since we're talking about paying attention to the regular season. And the Bucks, they struggled with the Pacers like pace and all that because of their lack of athleticism.
That's true. Maybe that is like a bad matchup for them and it's a little more tough.
I'm just saying, I think offensively, like defensively, like they're gonna get wrecked, right? Unless I saw like massive improvement, and even if I saw them like tighten up things in the regular season, they're not gonna have like a scheme-proof playoff defense because they just don't have the personnel. So that's where I'm like, I think they still need a bit of luck. That's why they're in this tier and not the higher tier. Okay, yeah, the Sixers I think just wreck them because they don't have anybody to guard them. Although they did crush the other thing with the Pacers. I was thinking about if Philly had won that series against the Knicks, they were about to go up against the Pacers. And then Embiid also has to keep up with Indiana's pace.
And he was hobbled. I think the Pacers would have beat them.
He was, but there were games in the regular season as well where it's like he's just not getting up and down the floor.
But I was just saying, yeah, I guess that's true. Even if he was healthy, maybe.
I think they create problems for each other. I do agree with you that the Sixers would probably prevail, but I wouldn't be like shocked, especially because I don't believe in the Sixers, if the Pacers were to like upset them in a series like that. So that's where I'm like, I don't totally write them off against anyone except Boston.
And the Knicks, they played them. The Knicks were injury riddled and it went to 7 games.
Actually, if the Knicks were healthy, I'd probably
pick them too.
Also,
I just
like,
wasn't sure because
say
of
the
the
Pacers should
iHeart
not win this.
thing. I don't know how the Knicks are gonna be right now, and so I wouldn't like begrudge anyone who was like the Knicks are so
Sure.
much better, but I just don't know yet. But I'm
Yeah.
fine leaving the Pacers in B. Like I'm not like so staunchly like they should be in C. I was just kind of like, I don't really see them beating these other teams unless they
Yeah.
get really lucky, and they already did get really lucky. And I'm like, what are the chances that happens again?
That was it for B tier. Not a lot, but there's upset potential. So far, I have let you move Philly up to A, and you let me move the Pacers up to B. I wonder if we're going to move any teams down relative to each other. Like, but the teams that are up here are basically the ones that, like, I would be shocked if anyone but these teams was in the conference finals.
Same.
Unless it's the first team that I have in C tier,
The
which
Magic.
is the Miami Heat.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say the Magic.
I'd be shocked if the Magic made the
Oh,
conference
okay.
final. No, I'll just jump over to the Heat. They have Bam, they have Spo. Sometimes they have Jimmy. They're gonna make the playoffs somehow, whether it's through the play-in or not. Some of these teams, if I see them making the playoffs only through the play-in, but the offense is terrible. Like it has been for years, ever since I think it was the bubble season when they were the 1 seed and they had a really good offense. Every year since then, they've been 20th or below in offensive efficiency.
Yeah,
And
and then they just turn it
it's
up.
getting worse. Exactly. Can they go further than a first round exit? Absolutely. It's the East. I see them as having, despite literally everyone else on the roster, because they have Bam and sometimes Jimmy, they can
Man.
create a game breaking defense against any team, particularly in the East.
Yeah, I almost put them in D tier, but I think like they have such big expectations for themselves as an organization, and Bam is so good, and he looked amazing in the Olympics. I was like, I got to put him in C, you know?
Yeah. And they're a top 5 defense, but their offense is so bad. Like that's the part that needs to, I guess, ray of hope that I will add here that will actually help them potentially defensively and offensively is that after watching Khalil Ware in Summer League, I'm like, oh, okay, this guy is actually good. And he might be skilled enough to play as a 4 next to Bam so that they have actual size in that starting lineup, potentially. Maybe he's coming off the bench, whatever it is. Or size next to Bam, or they have an actual backup center that's like playable because they have not had, instead of Kevin Love having to play backup center minutes at 37 years old or however old he is now, they might win more regular season games than they did last year. They had so many injuries last season. They didn't have, like, I think their most played lineups played less than like 100 minutes together because they constantly had guys in and out of the lineup. It may not matter that they have a higher seed though, because they were horrible on the at home last year. They were actually had a better road record than their home record. Like, I thought that these Miami Knights were supposed to take other teams by surprise, but I don't know if it's just like the fans or whatever it is. Like they need to show up more and give this team a bump because they need it.
Yeah, I think the days of Heat culture, magic, voodoo are over, and they need serious changes. And I think Jimmy's time may be coming to an end more rapidly than people think. That's kind of where I'm sitting. But I love Jimmy. I want him to keep doing good. I kind of I actually like the Heat a little bit, like honestly, just because I watched LeBron on the Heat, and I love LeBron. And I think it's fun when they're good because Spo is really cool. But yeah, I think C is the perfect spot for them.
Let's go to your last C tier team, Will. The
I feel
Orlando
like
Magic.
Oh, the Magic.
Which was actually also in C tier for me.
I just think they're a fun team, and I like Jalen Suggs, and he's going to be better. I think Franz is going to be better. I think Paolo's going to be better. They're just like a young team, and they have KCP, and he's a veteran, and I like the mixture of championship veteran comes into the young team and doesn't allow bullshit.
I think we both agree that they're going to be as good or better than they were last year. Particularly offensively, it's hard to get worse than they were. I made a joke last episode that was like, maybe they might get worse on offense, but it's really hard to be worse than they were, given the talent they have. There are definitely worse offensive teams, but given the talent they have, because they just turned the ball over so goddamn much and could not make a 3-point shot. We both agree they'll be better, and yet we both think that they're going to make the playoffs be a first-round exit. Again, that's what they were last year. And actually, of the kinds of first-round exits that you could be, they had the best kind, which was like made it to game 7, right? Even though they gave up a massive lead in game 7.
Yeah, I just think they're going to be on the lower end of the seeding, and the top 4 teams are just, they're going to beat them. Like,
I actually don't know that they'll be on the lower end of seeding. Like, I could actually see them sneaking into the top 4 in seeding, but then getting upset by one of those other teams.
Yeah, that could be too. I just think either way, whoever they're matching up in the first, I just don't see them winning in a 7-game series.
I think the offense just needs too much, and they didn't really address it in terms of playmaking and point guard play. Maybe Paolo just takes a massive leap just on his own. But I do think that it would have helped to just get him some guidance by having a point guard there. Like, that was one of the things that I really wanted for that team. It's not necessarily having like a Tyus Jones that wants to play all the time, although I wouldn't have minded them getting Tyus Jones either, but just a veteran point guard who could help guide these guys and improve their offensive game by just helping them like see the floor differently, advice that they're giving them like when they're on the bench, like all this stuff, like what are you seeing when the game's going on? And they don't really have that on the team anymore. They at least had like a Joe Ingles before, even Markelle Fultz before, who wasn't really like a great point guard.
I mean, KCP played with the best 2 point guards in the league, in LeBron and Jokic.
He's not a point guard himself.
Hey, the coaches should be able to coach up Paolo, man. Let's just trust Paolo that he's going to figure it out, and he has coaches who can develop him.
Why would I trust a 21-year-old to just figure it out?
Hey, LeBron did
You don't do that. He's not LeBron.
He was a #1 overall pick.
Okay, you guys, you heard it here first, folks. Will Jones just said Paolo Banchero could be as good as LeBron James.
They're a similar archetype in a way. You know, obviously not the same freakish athleticism that LeBron had, not the Swiss Army knife of LeBron.
He's bigger than LeBron.
Anyway.
LeBron's a freak. But anyway, Paolo Banchero. I do expect him to make some kind of leap. I think he's going to cut out a little bit of those really bad shots from his shot diet and just improve the efficiency. Like, that alone would take the offense up like a point per 100 possessions, which would be massive. Franz needs to improve his shooting, and it's hard to get worse than he was last year, especially considering where his baseline, should be. I do think that the only way to go is up for this offense, but I don't think it's going to improve by the margin that it should to bring them past a team that I expect to win a first-round series. And if the offense doesn't get better, you're just relying on the defense more to carry you through the regular season. And they were able to do that last year. They ended up, I think, 3rd in defense after the Timberwolves and the Celtics. It's a lot of energy to rely on your defense throughout the entirety of an 82-game regular season. So that's why I want the offense to improve, get a top seed, give yourself a little bit of a better chance. Because they were crushing the Cavs in those home games. But whenever they played on the road, they just couldn't get it together. And even in that game 7, they went up, but they weren't able to keep that lead. So love them to bits, but maybe they'll make a move midseason. Who knows?
All right, hit the subscribe button and hit the like button on YouTube. And yeah, we love you in YouTube and in Serbia and the United States or whatever it is you're watching. And just remember, winning is fun and losing sucks.
Unless you're tanking for flag.
Yeah, because then losing's fun.